All right, today we're talking footwork. Now, footwork is a really talked about topic, but we're going to talk about some concepts that you can use regardless of your climbing ability. And this is the idea of pushing and pulling with your feet. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but I just wanted to go over a few scenarios where pushing and pulling in the feet is much more important than maybe what you feel like you're not strong enough here in your arms, or maybe you feel like the hold is too far away. We're gonna try to use this idea of pushing and pulling with our feet to get around some reason that you think you can't do a boulder. So I'm gonna get shoot up and we're gonna try some boulders, give you some examples, all that good stuff. So with footholds in the gym, we see a lot of different types, but a lot of times you see sloped holds like this, where toeing in feels like a challenge, right? So the first thing we wanna be thinking about before we start pushing and pulling is how we can increase the surface area. You don't want to be up on your toe like this. You don't want your ankle to completely collapse. So we want to find the good balance of how to create contact on here. As a general rule of thumb, standing on the hold sideways is going to make the pushing and pulling harder. So those are kind of more niche scenarios, but we're just going to be focusing on basic pulling and pushing using, we want to think about using that big toe. Now the big toe is kind of think of it as you're aiming with that big toe. So this is going to be where you get the most power, and most climbing shoes are designed so that the most precise point of the shoe is right around the big toe. So I'm going to show you just some examples of pushing and pulling and how that can help you succeed. So we'll use this green V3-4 as an example of how you can either muscle through, or we can use technique and using our legs to pull through to have success on this boulder. So you have to use your discretion and your problem solving to figure out, will this work in this scenario? But with this boulder, I've got a mix of normal slopey foot jibs. I've got a smaller one up there, but I'm gonna be showing you this crux bit right up here where you're gonna be shouldering out. And I'm gonna show you how you can either use your feet to do this or you can muscle through it. So I'm starting out, moving my way up. Now right here, this is a place where I think a lot of people will pull with their arms like this to get up to that hold. Now what you can do instead, I'm gonna put my foot here and I'm gonna get the weight up and over that foot. Now obviously it still involves pulling with my arms, but this concept of pulling with your feet allows you to find positions that take quite a bit less energy. So one more time, what you want to think about doing is leading with the feet through the hips to then grab the hold. It does not have to go slow. A lot of the times you'll see climbers do it quickly like this, but if you look, I'm still starting the power actually from the foot through the ankle into the hips. Let's see, am I even in the frame? Beautiful. So in this first example I gave with this boulder, I showed how you can pull with your feet. Now, this concept that you also will push with your feet isn't talked about as much. There's a lot of pushing that happens when you're climbing, especially like I said earlier in this vertical terrain. I'm gonna show you an example of pushing with my feet. Now, it's not gonna look very different, but it's more about getting into this mindset of how you're using your footwork through your legs to kind of inform the rest of your body when you're climbing. So I'm gonna use this V4-5 as an example. I'm gonna start here, and all of these holds, I showed some of these earlier, they're quite poor. They are just essentially a flat surface. This is another common thing in the gym where if you don't push hard enough, the pressure is required, otherwise you'll slip off. So I'll give a quick example here. Start out on the ground. All right, so now I'm in this transition section. Now this is where I'm gonna be pushing with my feet. Now, if I'm not pushing with my feet, what ends up happening, as I go to move, if I don't have enough pressure in my feet, they end up slipping out from under me. So this idea of pushing does take a lot of practice because most of the time, you're so focused on what's happening in your upper body. What I'm gonna think about is trying to relax my upper body, but use my upper body to get me into a better body position to activate big toe through the ankle, into your legs, and then into the rest of your body. So in this same position, I'm gonna try to get my weight all the way over and I'm pushing into this foot. Now, most of the time you're gonna just see this type of movement. So what I did here, I pushed this left foot into my right foot to increase the pressure. I'll show you what it looks like if I don't increase the pressure. If I just have my left foot on, immediately it's way harder to get over here. What you have to do now is muscle through it, which is much harder. But if I can use my feet, I'm gonna use this left foot to push into the right foot. It's one of those concepts that you have to practice constantly. And when you watch a normal climber in the gym flow through a boulder, you don't think about what they're doing with their feet here. But what's actually happening is a constant pressure to maneuver your body through space. So continuing on this idea of pushing and pulling with the feet, we're only talking about vertical terrain today. Steep terrain, it gets a little bit more complicated, so I'll save that for another video. But when you're in vertical terrain, almost all of the weight sometimes is in your legs. This is where I think it's best to practice this concept, because if all the weight's already in your legs, you can naturally maneuver on the wall. So to practice this, what I spend most of my time doing is in my sessions, I go in with the intention of practicing this concept. So the intentionality behind your session, next time you go into the gym, say, I'm gonna practice pulling with my feet and pushing with my feet to see how that can help me. I'm gonna show you some more examples of pushing and pulling on some boulders over on this zone. We're gonna stay kind of in this V3 to V6 range. Let's find something that looks simple and see how we can use our feet. Okay, so for the crux of this V4, there's a few ways we could do this. We could just pull over and hope that our feet stay. But what we could also do is we can dangle and relax our upper body and use our feet to pull over. So what I'm gonna do is on this right foot, I'm gonna think about really pulling over the knee and reaching at the same time. So this is a very small move, but without doing it like this, you have to use more of the left arm to pull up. The concept of pulling and pushing with your feet, there's a million ways to practice it. The more important thing is I want to start a conversation and a series where we show examples and we talk about scenarios where we pull and how we think about it. You have to start to think about doing this to make that mind and body connection. And it starts out, I think, in your warm-ups. So like I said, I don't do a ton of drills, but you can do a lot of intentional warming up. Think about pulling over the hip. Think about pushing through your feet to move your body as opposed to using your arms to move your body. So like I said, we're gonna do a series on footwork, especially this pushing and pulling concept. So next time we'll do in the steep, see how that goes. We're gonna continue to talk about this too, so check out our short form stuff. We're gonna do some quicker tips and tricks, but check us out next week and we'll do some steep terrain, pushing and pulling and seeing how that goes. This way.